Hey everyone, Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton here with our weekly update on social media. Thank you as always for joining us. A lot happening in terms of corruption and transparency and accountability, and you are at the right spot to find out more. First up, of course, is the big news about the depositions of Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton before the, House Oversight and Government Reform Committee over the Epstein matter. Now, you may recall they were asked to come in and testify under oath, and they refused. They rejected or ignored subpoenas to testify, and so both Bill and Hillary were referred by the committee to the full House for a vote for contempt of Congress. Now, that potentially, if it worked, if it had been passed, could have led to the prosecution of Bill and Hillary for refusing to testify, as was what happened, I think, improperly and outrageously to Peter Navarro and Stephen Bannon. But they thought better of it and chose to comply with the subpoena, hence the depositions this week of Hillary Clinton and then of Bill. I think Bill may still be testifying for as I'm presenting to you now. And it is what you would expect it to be when it comes to the Clintons. Prevarications, misleading statements, half-truths, you name it, outright lies. You can be sure that is the context of their testimony when we are finally able to see it. So why were Bill and Hillary Clinton requested or required to testify? Because of their long-standing relationship with Epstein. Bill had many communications and meetings with him, as he's attested to. We've noted the flights he's taken on his plane, etc. The Clinton Global Initiative, according to Epstein's own lawyers at one time, Epstein was the part of the group that organized it. Ghislaine Maxwell was at Chelsea Clinton's wedding. Ghislaine is now in jail for essentially the sex trafficking she engaged in for Epstein and who knows who else. And this is just a classic Hillary. She was asked about, well, how the heck did you say you don't know Epstein. What was Ghislaine Maxwell doing at Chelsea's wedding then? And this is what she had to say.
Can I ask, why was Ghislaine Maxwell invited to the daughter of Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010? She'd already been mentioned in a civil lawsuit by Virginia Giuffre before that. Jeffrey Epstein had already been convicted before that.
She came as the plus one, the guest of someone who was invited.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Yeah, Ghislaine just happened to get in because she was a plus one. So could Epstein have gotten in as a plus one? I mean, by that time, it was pretty well known what was going on in Epstein world. And she was there because she just happened to be a plus one. That's so typical Hillary. And in my view, obviously dishonest. Now, there are good reasons for asking Bill Clinton questions given his proximity to and relationship with Epstein. And the other big reason Bill Clinton should testify or was required to testify, or it should have been made clear as to what's one of the reasons he was looked at with suspicion about his relationship with Epstein, is because Bill Clinton engaged, it looks like, in some of the same types of sexual misbehavior and assault that Epstein was engaged in. There's significant evidence he assaulted women. There's significant, incredible evidence he raped Juanita Broderick. We represented Juanita, our lawyers did, for Judicial Watch, helping her fend off the retaliation and expose the abuse of her for blowing the whistle on her being raped. And Bill, as best I can tell, has never denied raping her. So yeah, that's why Bill Clinton should have been questioned on the Epstein issue. Not only did he have the connections, but he had the same patterns of behavior that Epstein had. Now, when it comes to Bill Clinton testifying, it was somewhat of an historic day in that regard. because no president has been forced to testify under a subpoena before Congress. I don't remember the original circumstances of asking him to testify. Was he allowed to come in voluntarily and just testify? I suspect he would have been if he had not played games. I mean, that's how desperate they were to stop the testimony. They almost went to a situation where they could have been prosecuted rather than testify. Now, Bill Clinton has a demonstrated record of lying under oath. He admitted to falsifying testimony related to his assault of women in the Paula Jones depositions back in the day. He admitted to that testimony obstructing justice, more or less. And as part of, he was found in civil contempt for doing so. And as part of a scam plea agreement with the independent counsel at the time, he did not contest any of that and gave up his license for 5 years. So I'm sorry, when he comes out and starts complaining about how terrible what's happening to Hillary, and you know, he would, the last thing he'd do is allow the abuse of women. He lied about abuse of women, and he abused women himself, as I say, based on all that evidence. You know, and the other big question I have is, or the other big question that is raised is, why hasn't Hillary been questioned on other issues? Why hasn't she been questioned by Congress on Russiagate? Why hasn't she been questioned by the Justice Department on Russiagate? Why hasn't Bill been questioned on his Russian connections that Judicial Watch helped document? The monies he was getting while Hillary was in the State Department, et cetera. So I don't want to overstate the importance of this testimony by Hillary and Bill. It's so unreliable. I'm sure, my guess is that there could be probably several perjury charges if anyone seriously looked at their testimony. I don't know how careful they were. I mean, Hillary's got a demonstrated record of obstructing justice and lying as well under oath. I mean, she was almost prosecuted. Judicial Watch demonstrated that over the Whitewater scandal. That involved government fraud and hiding and destroying evidence. And the only reason she wasn't prosecuted was because they didn't think they could get a DC jury to do it. I mean, we got the records on it. That's what their argument, that's what the special counsel or independent counsel's analysis was, that we could put her in jail or prosecute her successfully, but not in these political circumstances, no. I used to kind of use the phrase St. Hillary of the grand jury. And she was the first lady and only first lady to have to testify before a grand jury. And I think she lied before that grand jury. I mean, isn't it strange how the Clintons just never leave in terms of that corruption, the dishonesty, the prevarications, you know, the Clinton way, Slick Willie, you know, it never is going to go away. I'm convinced she wants to run for president, which is her right. You know, people say often, oh, well, that happened a long time ago. Oh, you're still talking about that? You're still talking about this? Well, A, it wasn't a long time ago. And yeah, we still are talking about it, because when corrupt people get away with corruption, they often engage in additional corrupt activity. You know, some poor guy on the street, and I say poor guy in a sarcastic way, who gets arrested a dozen times and doesn't face significant consequences, let out repeatedly, continues to commit crimes. And yet we ask, why does Bill and Hillary Clinton why do they continue to commit crimes or engage in misconduct? They're just like the guy on the street who gets caught a dozen times and nothing is done with them. And so we've got this Epstein escapade Where's the investigations on Russia, et cetera? I don't understand it. I don't understand Congress's priorities here. I think the Epstein issue is a big issue. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have testified. I'm wondering why they haven't pursued these other issues more seriously. Now, Judicial Watch still has litigation on the Epstein issue. We haven't gotten one document under FOIA from the Justice Department or FBI. They're playing games on those records. It's incredible. They've released 3.5 million pages publicly. They haven't given us one of them under FOIA, or even pointed to them and say, this is the material, it's all there. Because it's not all there. They can't say that. Because you know what they told us just a few days before they released those 3.5 million pages? They're still looking for documents. CIA, still looking for documents. That's another lawsuit we have. And it's pretty clear the CIA should have documents. I mean, this Epstein thing is bigger than even I thought it might be after all these documents came out. And what I love to see is how the American people who have been intensely skeptical about how Epstein was treated and presumed there was outrageous cover-ups, not only of his conduct, but people around him who were in positions of power and influence. And they were right. Is there evidence of additional crimes? Maybe. I think there is. By both Americans. In the UK, they say there could be potential crimes by the brother of the king and a senior government official until recently. Powerful leader behind the scenes in the United Kingdom. And people and other people are having who have connections with Epstein even after his conviction for significant sex crimes. They're being called out for pretending that they didn't have the relationship they had, including the Commerce Secretary under President Trump, Mr. Lutnick. I mean, he suggested that he didn't have much of a relationship, and then the documents come out and says, oh no, not only did you basically continued the relationship in a way that you previously suggested you hadn't. Does it mean he has to resign? Well, certainly puts him in an awkward situation. I can't imagine President Trump is happy about being put in that situation as well. Now, Kash Patel's been in the news because he was over at the Olympics celebrating. But he's also been in the news for a much more significant reason, which is the fact that records obtained by the FBI or released by the FBI or leaked, I don't know how they came about, show that Kash Patel and Susie Wiles, the chief of staff to the president, had their phone records rifled through by the Biden administration. And they were hidden in a way that made it difficult to find that was going on. They were both private citizens at the time, but Susie was President Trump's campaign chief at the time. Here's the big story by Reuters. The FBI subpoenaed records of phone calls made by Kash Patel and Susie Wiles, now the FBI director and White House chief of staff, when they were both private citizens in 2022 and 2023. During the federal probe of Donald Trump, Patel told Reuters on Wednesday. Patel portrayed the seizing of his phone records by the FBI and efforts to conceal them as an example of overreach by unelected government officials under Biden, a theme often repeated by President Trump. So there you have Reuters trying to undermine it as a political complaint as opposed to a substantive meritorious complaint, which is what it is. And Kash tells Reuters it is outrageous and deeply alarming that the previous FBI leadership secretly subpoenaed my own phone records along with those of now White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, using flimsy pretexts and burying the entire process in prohibited case files designed to evade all oversight. Prohibited case files, so that was kind of a way of secreting the records from a typical availability within the FBI. You needed to literally know where to look. It's like burying something deep in the computer files in a way purposely to hide their existence to other FBI officials. I mean, there's no other way to describe it. And it's even worse when it comes to what the spying on Susie Wiles involved. Let's see let me give you the detail on that. In 2023, the FBI recorded a phone call between Wiles and her attorney. Her attorney. According to two FBI officials, Wiles' attorney was aware that the call was being recorded and consented to it, but Susie Wiles was not. I just don't understand how anyone would think that was appropriate. If indeed that report is correct. I don't believe it went down the way they're suggesting here. I don't trust a darn thing the FBI says. Even when they're exposing misconduct, I don't trust they're exposing everything that went on. Now, separately, Akash fired about 10 FBI agents and support staff, maybe 12, tied to the Mar-a-Lago raid, according to reports. Not nearly enough. But here we have further confirmation of wild corruption, abuse of power, weaponization of government in a very dangerous fashion. Now, there's been previous disclosures that hundreds of conservatives were also secretly targeted by this gang. Of course, Trump was. You had U.S. senators targeted. They were targeting members of Congress, the Speaker of the House. Judicial Watch has been trying to get additional information, been getting the runaround from the FBI on the Arctic frost, which was the underlying investigations that were initiated by the Biden gang to target Trump and then taken up like a baton by Jack Smith. And of course, I knew this of this abuse personally because I suffered it. Judicial Watch suffered it. They came to my house. I haven't forgotten the day because it was a big day for me. I had skin cancer surgery. They did a good job. You probably can't see the scar. But I had literally just come home from skin cancer surgery. And I'm lying on the couch, recovering. And it was in the evening. It was around 6:30, so it was nighttime. I'm like, oh, come on, who's knocking on my door this time of day? No one else was around to answer the door. I went and answered it, and it was two FBI agents giving me a subpoena. And then later, they subpoenaed Judicial Watch records. And supposedly, as a witness, I was going to have an interview with them. And I asked me what you want to ask me. And then they scheduled the meeting, and then they pulled it because Jack Smith wanted to abuse me by bringing me before the grand jury. Completely unethical and really never happens in federal investigations. And I was hauled in before the grand jury and harassed for 4 hours by 3 prosecutors on Smith's team, arguing with me about my tweets, First Amendment issues related to the elections. It's not a pleasant experience. I pushed back. It was outrageous. And I can't say I'm the only, obviously, President Trump, they wanted to put in jail. but they were harassing me because I was advocating for the rule of law and making sure that Trump was not being abused, making sure that election laws were being followed, making sure elections weren't being stolen. Completely political in terms of the attack on me. And separately, they're going after the entire Republican Party political establishment, their grassroots leaders, their state leaders. We've never seen anything like it before in American history. And so this week, it's just more icing on the cake. And I don't want to use the word cake because it's much less pleasant than that. I mean, Susie Wiles, literally, they were listening in on her phone call with her lawyer. And I have reason to believe, I generally know, Judicial Watch was under the targeting of the Biden Justice Department and FBI as well, beyond even my witness testimony. Why? Because we were suing them to get information about the abuses of Trump. And what's been done on all this? Other than Judicial Watch's lawsuits for accountability? Not much. Some agents have been reassigned. Some agents have been fired. Some have left, retired. They saw the writing on the wall. But not enough. The FBI has, what, 12,000 employees? You know how many FBI agents have been fired, even with the last batch? 148. 148 employees have been fired as a result of what happened. Do you think that's enough? I don't. Is there a criminal investigation going on? If so, who's running it? Is the FBI investigating the FBI? Is the Justice Department investigating the Justice Department? I doubt it. And even if they were, you can't trust the investigation. This is a further demonstration the FBI is irredeemably compromised and corrupted and can't be saved. There may be elements of what the FBI does that need to be reserved or preserved, taken up by maybe other government agencies, but I would just shatter and scatter the powers of the FBI as appropriate to other agencies. The Justice Department should be dramatically curtailed as well. I mean, they talk about the FBI subpoenaing records. The FBI doesn't subpoena records. It's the Justice Department that does it in partnership with the FBI. The FBI doesn't go to courts by itself. They do it under the guidance of U.S. attorneys, assistant U.S. attorneys, etc. So the Justice Department's embroiled in this as well. This is why I've been advising publicly President Trump to appoint a special prosecutor, a presidential prosecutor that reports to him, that's separate and apart from the FBI and the Justice Department to investigate this abuse. It's been over a year. There's been no substantial advancement of any criminal inquiry into any of this. Other than through Judicial Watch. And I appreciate the releases of information, but that's only a part of what the FBI and Justice Department are obligated to do here. And the fact that these investigations haven't proceeded apace is a confirmation that there needs to be a third party doing the investigation. Let me be clear. The FBI can't investigate the FBI. The Justice Department can't investigate the Justice Department. So the president should run the investigations out of the White House with an attorney, prosecutors reporting to him. There are plenty of ways to get it done. And of course, maybe Congress can push for and end the abuses of the FBI with the approach I'm suggesting. Erase it as an agency, whatever powers that they think the federal government needs in terms of law enforcement, transfer it as appropriate to other agencies. And the Justice Department, you know, it used to be the Attorney General of the United States was just an advisor to the president, did very little litigation. But now it's like the super prosecutor, federal prosecutor out of Washington, D.C. that has this extensive power that the founders never really envisioned. And I think we need to rethink that. But certainly the Justice Department is a disaster. And I'm not condemning Pam Bondi over it or Kash Patel over the FBI, but I think they need to be cognizant of the fact that no one trusts the agencies. And they need to take advantage of the fact that the American people elected President Trump and empowered them to pursue the type of reformist ideas that I'm talking about. Now, you know, I say what I say. I understand there aren't a lot of people in the FBI or even the Trump administration that may agree with me. But I know a lot of you agree with me. And some of them agree with me without publicly saying they agree with me, I can tell you that. So we've got our own independent FOIAs that are fought by or fought over with this FBI and this Justice Department on these issues. We've got comprehensive state investigations into the concurrent abuse by their allies in the various states with Democrat politician prosecutors. And unless there's a secret investigation going on, I don't believe there is because I haven't seen any evidence of it, I will say that Judicial Watch has a much more comprehensive investigation privately in the public interest of the abuses targeting Trump's team, President Trump himself, and countless Americans than anything the Justice Department and the FBI is doing. Because the records they release, I applaud that they're leaking to the Reuters here. I applaud that they send some material to Congress. It's only a portion of the material they have, though. So I'm getting frustrated. Are you frustrated? I'm sure President Trump's frustrated because he's going to be the first one they come after. Because the FBI is still going to be the same FBI structurally, philosophically. When an enemy of President Trump comes in as a president and basically just says, go to town, guys, go do what you were doing under Jack Smith and Merrick Garland and the Obama gang and the deep state, just go and do it again. You know what to do. They don't even know, they don't even need to be told what to do. I mean, they're telling us what they're going to do. They promise to prosecute anyone who dared to hold anyone accountable in the prior administrations over the abuses. So time's a wasting. I mean, firing 138 people out of an FBI operation of 12,000, unimpressive. You know how many, you know what, they call them RIFs, reductions in force, which other agencies have used to cut out the dead wood in the deep state, the bureaucrats who shouldn't be there are wasting our money and such. You know how many the FBI has cut out in terms of wasteful employees, reduction in forces? One. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. So you can be sure your Judicial Watch will keep on our own independent heavy lifting on these key issues. But part of that heavy lifting means encouraging the administration to achieve some justice and protect the American people from what's going to happen again once the abusers take power again, and they will. It's just, you know, our natural political life is that you're going to get people who come back, and the opposition has promised they're going to do it again. So by way of example of our independent heavy lifting on behalf of the rule of law to expose the lawfare abuse targeting President Trump and countless other innocent Americans, we filed yet another Freedom of Information Act lawsuit for the category of secret records that that Kash Patel, the FBI assistant director, or then assistant director, he's now back on the podcast circuit, Dan Bongino has alerted us to, that they had burn bags in the FBI of records they were hiding. So we said, give us the records from those burn bags. And needless to say, unfortunately to say, we got I call it the hand to the face. Nope, you can't have it. So we sued. We filed a Freedom of Information Act against the Department of Justice concerning the discovery and contents of burn bags found in secured, sensitive, compartmented information facility at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C. So we just filed the lawsuit, I don't know, just a week or so ago. We'd asked for the records back in November. For records, here, let me ask you, I'll tell you what we asked for. I'll show it to you online here first. The FBI request asks for contents of the burn bags, all unclassified documents or releasable portions thereof, including any related to the FBI's Mar-a-Lago search, the January 6th issue, the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, or about the John Durham report. The John Durham report, which was the last guy who supposedly was going to get to the bottom of all of it, who failed miserably, still hiding material about what he found. This is interesting. The original CIA referral to former FBI Director James Comey containing intelligence related to the 2016 U.S. presidential election campaign, found in a storage closet adjacent to the director's office and transported to room 9582 SCIF, which I believe is the SCIF at issue about where the burn bags were found. I think that CIA report was, you're going to have to double check me on this, that the Russians had intel that Hillary was going to make up the Russiagate scheme to distract from her email gates corruption that Judicial Watch uncovered. And U.S. intelligence officials, according to Ratcliffe, forwarded an investigative referral to James Comey and Peter Strzok regarding a U.S. presidential candidate, namely Hillary Clinton's, approval of a plan concerning U.S. presidential candidate Donald Trump and Russian hackers hampering U.S. elections as a means of distracting the public from her use of a private email server. So they knew Hillary was working to manufacture false charges against Donald Trump. What you should know is that she was working with this Christopher Steele character, hence the Steele dossier. Steele concurrently was being paid by the FBI to do the same thing. It was literally a joint operation between Hillary and the FBI to subvert our election. The FBI was leaking to Hillary material about their investigation of Trump. We've known about this for years. It was exposed by Judicial Watch, the details of it. And yet this Congress, Republican-controlled, just gave the FBI virtually every dollar they asked for. An immaterial cut, I think, is over $500 billion. Same for the Justice Department. And by the way, it wasn't like it happened 4 years ago they found abuse. They found FBI abuse targeting senators and congressmen literally weeks before they gave them the full budget. Is anyone serious in this city? Is anyone serious in this city about this government corruption? And we have lawsuit after lawsuit. We sued previously for records about this room. We asked again through this lawsuit. for more details about what they found? Let me see what they said to us when we asked for the records. This is always a classic. So they told us they got the request in November and went radio silent. Now, if I thought the lawsuit, sometimes you just have to sue to get their attention, and it's not the end of the world if you have to sue, because there's a lot of people asking questions. Fewer are suing, and maybe by suing it brings it and escalates it to the leadership's attention. You wouldn't hear me complaining about it as much. But what happens is we sue, and then they come back and say, oh, not only are we going to, we ignored your request initially, but we're not going to give you what you asked for because there are privileges and exemptions we want to use to justify the withholdings. So as if what comes to what we can expect based on past experience is they won't give us what we're asking for, and they will defend the criminality and hide the criminality that we're trying to expose here. Judicial Watch has long been a leader in exposing the lawfare against President Trump. We've had historic disclosures made through our litigation, and there are potentially historic disclosures if the FBI and Justice Department would just follow along and give us the records under FOIA. And what happens is if the transparency, is it full accountability? No. It's better than no accountability. And the more transparency we have, the more information the public learns about what the government's been up to, the more educated the public is about the corruption, the more pressure there will be for fuller accountability through the legal process. And we're kind of seeing that in part through the Epstein releases, right? That material is causing a furor, sometimes ill-placed, often well-placed, over the corruption that's been exposed in those documents. It's just great work by Judicial Watch that we're just always pushing. So the tip of the iceberg in terms of fraud with government spending, especially social welfare spending, is in Minnesota. You have unbelievable amounts of money that have been fraudulently spent, essentially stolen from American taxpayers. Upwards of $9 billion, maybe much more than that. And Judicial Watch has been always very interested in what's going on in Minnesota because it's been a left-wing mess in a variety of ways for years. The Somali population in Minnesota, because it's politically powerful for the left there, because when they run for office, they rely on the support of the community to win. So as a result, if there is corruption associated with the community in a significant way, it's protected or even enabled by the politicians because they rely on the group. So they treat them like one group, and we call them out for it, and they pretend we're being the racist. In fact, they're treating them like a racist because they say, oh, well, that corrupt Somalian, we can't hold him accountable, or her, because it will make it look like we're attacking all Somalians. They treat people like the caricature of a racist. It's an individual. They see the race. They see the ethnicity. We see the individuals. They play ethnic politics. They play racial politics, the left does. And it leads to this terrible corruption. Now, we've been pursuing these various issues in Minnesota for years. There's been this government corruption, and it's been exposed more recently by that young guy, Mr. Shirley, right? I'm sure you've seen his videos. The federal government's been pursuing the corruption. Even Governor Walz has been cornered into admitting there's a lot of corruption, even though it all blossomed under his watch. And don't believe me, read the New York Times. When I talk to you about why Democrat politicians in Minnesota, the party in Minnesota, the Democratic Party isn't called Democratic Party. It's the Democratic Farmers Workers Party, I think it's called. Oh, excuse me, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. And so I read in the New York Times that, everyone who, New York Times reported all that about the politicians running the state didn't want to cross these criminals because they didn't want to offend Somalians. You're not offending Somalians by prosecuting someone who's committing a crime. You're offending racialists and racists who pretend that prosecuting one group member is prosecuting the entire group. It's absurd. But that's the way the left thinks. So separately, we've been investigating all the corruption that's been going on, and it goes beyond the Somalians, because $9 billion, that you need a lot of help to fraudulently engage, steal that type of money. So it's much broader. And a lot of it is tied to, the left lectures us we need to pay for government child care. We need to pay for all sorts of disability work or disability help, autism, for example, for these poor kids. And it was those places that were the epitome of fraud. That money just went out in numbers. The numbers alone suggested fraud, because you can't just spend that sort of money all of a sudden have a demand that was never there before. It's obviously fraudulent. So we filed a FOIA request for records about the Minnesota Department of Children, Youth, and Families for records concerning the fraud that the agency has uncovered, in this case mostly in the child care sector. And this is a catalog of fraud and criminality that is stark. And I encourage you to go because we pulled 458 pages, or just received 458 pages. I don't even think this is a lawsuit, to their credit. They gave us these records. So there could be even more here than I'm going to be able to get to, and certainly I'm not even going to be able to get to the stuff that we exposed in the full release. But the more troubling aspects of it is, so there's all sorts of fraud in the sense that the invoices don't match, they're being asked to pay for things, there's no evidence that the expense was made. The most significant evidence, in my view, in terms of troubling evidence, is that there was serious issues of people not being children not being supervised as the law requires and as common sense requires. So time after time, they're finding circumstances where they've got people who are not supposed to be there without supervision, watching children as young as babies, like infants, or children having no supervision at all. For example, in December 2024, Nuna Child Care Center was issued a correction order documenting multiple supervision failures within a single afternoon visit. A child ran from the preschool classroom to the school-age classroom alone. A child ran from the preschool classroom to the school-age classroom alone. A teacher left 3 children alone in the classroom to grab something out of the lobby. Now, look, parents do stuff like that all the time. They got to leave the room, and the kids and the babies or whatever, they're alone for a minute. And parents have no choice. But when you're in a professional atmosphere supervising children, the expectation is that children are supervised by adults at all times. And there are instances after instances of that not happening in these circumstances. Another place, a correction order was issued against ABC Learning Center after inspectors observed children left without supervision. At approximately 3:12 p.m., this was in November 2025, they observed 7 children, school-aged, unsupervised, while a staff person walked down to the toddler and preschool classroom. So this is how bad it is. They know. They've got guys, well, not guys, gals, whoever. They've got inspectors from the state in the facility. So you've got your child care facility. Just think, you're running a child care facility. The inspectors come in, and the teachers are still not supervising the children, including babies. While they're there, it's happening. Can you imagine what is happening when they weren't there? So that's a major safety concern. I don't want to say that's the basis for the fraud, because that's kind of a safety concern. The fraud is in document after document here, and I don't have time to go through it all with you. You can look at it online. But it's repetitive because it's like a standard issue. So they look at, and I got to hand it to the state. They know where to look. They say, how many kids are entering that facility in the morning? Well, let's look at the attendance records. Let's look at what we're being charged in terms of the number of kids who they say are there. So 10 kids enter, yet they're charged for 15 kids. That's not literally the number, but that's exactly what's happening. They can see how many kids enter, and yet they're being charged for ghost children in these child care centers. And there's instance after instance of it happening. And it doesn't necessarily result in the system being shut down, or the school being shut down, or the child care center being shut down. It results in notices of overpayments. It results in notices of correction in case of the safety issues. And this is just one quick production to Judicial Watch that we put out there. And it's staggering. It's just staggering. Now, is it, relatively speaking, in terms of the numbers, it's relatively modest, but it's obviously a scam. So when you hear the left talk about government daycare, which is what they want to provide, it's not government care. It's not. Some of it's government daycare, but there's always a piece taken off the top for fraud. It necessarily goes with the programs. Now, can you mitigate it? Sure you can. Did they mitigate it in Minnesota? By no standard have they mitigated it. Because, as I said, this is just the tip of the iceberg in Minnesota alone. Billions and billions of dollars go out of this federal government, well, trillions really, with zero oversight. I mean, the outrage is what's been cut in the federal government, or what will be cut in terms of government spending as a result of this type of fraud. I see they decided to withhold certain money from Minnesota, I think it was, $250 million because of Medicaid fraud. They said, we're not giving you money until you prove this money is going to the people that taxpayers authorized it to go to. And you can be sure there's going to be a lawsuit over that, if not already. So that you get these modest efforts by the administration, which by comparison with historical standards are tremendous, but still modest in terms of the problem at issue. Zero follow-up from Congress. And this isn't a new issue. The issue of Minnesota social welfare fraud is not new. It's been more in the news, but it had been out there for a long time. So Judicial Watch will keep on keeping on, right? Exposing the full truth about what's going on in Minnesota and other states. I have another update on the outrages associated with the Biden invasion of millions of illegal aliens. Of course, the number one outrage related to that is the destruction of our sovereignty, the destruction of our public safety, and the billions spent, as far as I'm concerned, stolen effectively from the American people to give welfare to these illegal aliens who are not supposed to be here. So they come in, they're not supposed to be here. They're not supposed to be here at all. Too many go on to commit additional crimes that get American citizens killed, harmed, disabled, you name it, raped. And on top of that, people who have no business being here legally get taxpayer money or benefits. They say, oh, well, you know, they can't get Medicaid. They can't get, it doesn't matter. There's all sorts of money they get. And yes, they can get Medicaid indirectly. But that's another fight. We just uncovered at New York City's multi-million-dollar FEMA spending spree to house and feed documents. House and feed migrants. I'm focused on documents. Thanks to a Judicial Watch Freedom of Information Act lawsuit that we filed back in May, we received 710 pages of records from DHS detailing the millions spent up in New York City through FEMA. The new records show that during the Biden-Harris administration, in fiscal years 2023 and 2024, New York City received $188 million from the Shelter and Services Program, a federal grant program administered by FEMA in coordination with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. So rather than literally protecting our border protection money was spent on illegal aliens who Biden helped evade border controls, encouraged to evade border controls, encouraged to travel here illegally, encouraged to be trafficked here by the cartels. Our Border Patrol was used to give money to illegal aliens rather than to protect the country. The records include invoices which show the federal funds were spent on around-the-clock security staffing at a converted Manhattan office building used as a migrant shelter and daily meal deliveries to migrants housed across 33 New York City hotels. So many of you are watching are American citizens. Maybe some of you are non-citizens who are here legally. Do you recall you or any family members or individuals you know who got food delivered to them courtesy of the federal government? Maybe there's Meals on Wheels charitable deliveries that typically aren't free. Someone has to pay for them. But you know what I mean. Do you get food delivered to you by the federal government? You're a citizen. Is that the government ever given you food like that? Well, you're a sucker. Because if you had crossed the border illegally, not only did you get food, but you got a hotel for effectively as long as you needed it or wanted it. Arrow Security billed New York City Health and Hospital Corporation $3 million for just 2 consecutive billing periods for security guard services at a single Manhattan building. We have the receipts. Here, I'll bring up the meal delivery receipt. you go. Whitson's Culinary Group. They got the contract. Delivery location. Look at all the delivery locations. Dinner, breakfast, lunch. Dinner, breakfast, lunch. You see that? Did the work. I'm not suggesting they did anything fraudulent. I'm just suggesting the money shouldn't have been given them to begin with. The DHS Wingate by Wyndham at JFK Airport. The DHS Artel 535. I'm assuming the Rockaway's Inn at JFK. The Super 8. Let's go to the bottom for the total. Because for whatever reason, it's a secret. Look at some of these documents that are withheld, or sections. It's a trade secret. B4 is essentially a trade secret. That's the excuse. How many meals were sent, what price, and what the total was. But at least it looks like we're going to get the bottom. Let's go to the bottom. So this is a lot of stuff here. There you go. $500,000. And that's just a few days of meals. "33 Homeland Security migrant shelter sites receiving Whitson's meal deliveries included major hotel chains, as you saw, Red Roof Inn, Ramada, Comfort Inn, Best Western, Super 8, independent properties such as Artel 35, which is a hotel I was asking about. Another food service company billed $1.2 million across 10 heavily redacted invoices for food delivery at an undisclosed shelter site between March 2023 and May 2024. We have the receipts. Millions in taxpayer dollars were used by the Biden administration to provide virtually unlimited free housing and food to countless illegal aliens in New York City. And of course, there's no such thing as free lunch. You're paying for it, right? Literally. So not only were your lives put at risk, not only was our economy put at risk, your safety put at risk, but you've been gouged as the left that was running the Biden administration misused tax dollars, abused taxpayers to transfer cash to the illegal alien invaders they enabled to enter the country. And I complained earlier about where's been the investigations into how that happened, onto Russiagate. I can also say, where are the criminal investigations into the invasion enabled by Joe Biden? Mayorkas. And they aided and abetted criminal activity. That's what I see is happening here. So Judicial Watch will continue to document the invasion, try to get some accountability. The Trump administration, in many ways, has kind of stopped the bleeding, secured the border. 3 million people left America last year who were illegal aliens. 625,000, according to reports, were deported directly by, found and deported. 2.2 million or so were left on their own because they saw that the writing was on the wall. So a few more years like that, we can really get a handle on the illegal alien population. But there's got to be accountability for how we got here. I mean, those two people in Minnesota who were shot and killed by ICE agents, those two people are dead because of the illegal alien crisis caused by Joe Biden. I know it's not a direct causation, but that's the situation that led to that. Because the Trump administration was having to contend with the invaders being let out by Minnesota officials. They tried to capture those dangerous criminals, and the left was attacking them. Those circumstances arose because of the Biden invasion. So these consequences have been deadly beyond belief and quite expensive. So great work, again, by Judicial Watch, suing to get the details. I'm glad we got the details from the Trump administration here. And you know, that all of that is debt, right? I mean, we're still paying for it in many ways with deficit spending and all of that. So I'll keep you updated as we pursue additional information on the Biden invasion, additional information on the lawfare and the attack on our Republican form of government by the Biden, Clinton, Obama gang. Additional information on the fraud, waste, and abuse endemic in our massive federal government state welfare schemes. We are covering it all as best as we're able to within our capacities. And our capacities are significant in part because of your support. And I encourage you to continue to support Judicial Watch if you already are. If you are not, I hope I've given you a good reason to support us. And you can go to judicialwatch.org, make a donation outright. And if you're not able to support us, in the least, I hope you share this video, comment, like, do everything you can to get the word out. Share the information I'm sharing with you here. Go look at the press releases, share it with your community friends online, church, work, family. Educate, educate. We are a movement here at Judicial Watch, and America would be worse off but for our work. And so God bless you for your support, and I wish you the best. I'll see you here next week on Judicial Watch's Weekly Update. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.